This episode was made possible by our generous patrons. Welcome to episode 125 of the Ink to Film podcast, where we read the book
and then see the movie.
I'm James.
And I'm Luke.
And this week, with the help of special guest Mary Mascari, we discuss Francis Lawrence's 2011 film, Water for Elephants. We'd like to welcome our guest this week. Mary Mascari is the co-host of the Writing Easy podcast. Welcome to the show, Mary.
Hi, thanks. Great to be here.
And we are glad to have you. You were also an alum of Seton Hill Writing Popular Fiction Master's Program, which we both went to school at. So, you know, it's always good to have on a fellow alum.
You know, we're family, so we have to take care of each other. Can't get rid of me.
That's right. Isn't there in this movie there was some family comments being thrown around, I believe, about the circus, right? Maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm making that up.
I think more so than maybe it was like outwardly there in the book. You know, there was sort of like I don't know. I think there was like the comment was actually made like we're family, like we're looking out for you. Whereas before,
right?
In the book
and he it seemed like the August was really setting himself up to be kind of the father, like the patriarch of the family. Yeah. But anyway, we'll get into that. Mary, I wanted to mention that I was on your podcast, the Writing Easy podcast, this last week,
and it was great.
Thank you. We took, and it was an awesome experience. I love doing it, and I hope everybody checks it out. We talked about finding internal versus external motivation for writing, and I don't know. I thought it was a really fun conversation, useful, and I hope anybody who is a writer or a creative of any sort should check it out.
Yeah, no, it was great to have you, and it got really deep, and I think it was a really great conversation. It was great to have you there.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about your podcast, just in general? Like, what is it?
Yeah.
What is it about?
Well, the title fortunately says it all, hopefully. It's about writing and trying to take it easy. So writing is really a hard thing, and people take it very seriously and can get very worked up about it. And so our mission, me and my co-host Melissa, our mission is to try to help people just chill out a little bit, take care of yourself emotionally while you're dealing with the difficult work of writing, and just kind of finding different techniques and tactics and aspects to make it not quite so hard.
That's really cool. Luke was telling me that you guys keep it nicely portioned over there. Like your episodes are anywhere from like 15 minutes to 30 minutes, somewhere in there.
Yeah. We try to keep them under 30. Just a quick little in and out.
That's so cool and I kind of envy that because I have like Luke and I are so long-winded on this podcast that like I can't even imagine getting anything of substance out in that period of time. But like I love that you guys have it like set up like that because I feel like it's such a cool way for it's very accessible, I think, in that way.
Perfect thing is if you're writing and you feel like it's time to procrastinate, you can pull up a podcast and listen to it and then get back to work.
Yeah. So, Mary, you also have a unique perspective on the circus that I was hoping that you would talk about. And then maybe throughout you can, if you have any other observations, feel free to hit us with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I was really happy that you asked me to join me for this one because I actually was a clown with Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus in 1996 and 97. I graduated from Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Clown College and toured with the Red Unit. So I actually lived on a train. I worked with clowns and elephants. And so they didn't use it so much in the movie, but in the book when they were using terms like, oh, this is the 1st of May and this is the speck. And I think they called it the grease truck. We called it the pie car, things like that. I was like, oh, yeah, I'm totally familiar with what's going on. And it was very easy for me to picture everything, which is why then watching the movie was kind of interesting because I knew it. I knew all the history. In the book, she talks about how she went to the Ringling Museum in Sarasota. I have been there. That's where Clown College was. So, yeah. So I actually have like real world experience. I mean, it wasn't depression, but, I was there, man. I was a clown.
That's amazing. That's so cool. I just want to listen. Now I want the whole episode to just be you telling us amazing stories about being a clown in the circus. That's so cool.
It was a very odd experience. It wasn't what I was expecting. I came from a theater background, and the theater culture and the circus culture are very different. And actually, I feel like the book, and to a certain extent, the movie kind of captured some of that, with some of the hazing and things that happened, and the sort of being standoffish at first and then slowly accepting people. That was very circus. Whereas in theater, you come in, they're like, hey, you're fabulous, I'm fabulous, we'll be fabulous together. The circus was a little more let's see, prove yourself first. So I wasn't used to that. But yeah.
Do they still call the townsfolk rubes?
Not as much, no, because we didn't.
Okay.
It wasn't something like where we were these outsiders coming into these small towns, and interacting with them. We were, pulling into a stadium. It would be at like a basketball stadium or hockey stadium. You're inside, but I lived on a train. I had a little roomette.
Wow.
If you saw those berths that they had in the movie, that they were kind of like too high, I would have like 2 of those. So I was like, I didn't have a bunk, but I had a bunk size thing, and then I lived in that.
What blows me away is that when I was watching the movie, I was thinking about how miserable I would be trying to sleep on a train while traveling to the next place.
No,
was
it's
it
great.
as awful as I think it would be?
No. Sleeping on the train is wonderful because it just rocks you.
Really?
And you just conk out. Sleeping on the train was really nice. I didn't have, like I said, I didn't have any room, and it wasn't real luxurious. But yeah, while we were moving, if it was overnight and we were actually going from place to place, oh man, yeah, rocking like a baby. It was great.
That is so cool. I didn't know all of that. I just knew you had some connections, but I don't think we ever actually have talked about it. So I'm really glad that you're able to share that perspective on this. I think you're going to have the real inside look at things that we're only guessing at. So I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, there's some things at the last episode I was like, wait, but I'll tell you. I'll explain. Oh, I got to get on there. Let's go. I got things to tell you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, speaking of which, I wanted to give you the opportunity because you told us that you read the book as well. Was there anything specifically that you'd like to touch on with the book? Any sort of preamble that you want to set up?
There is one thing that I want to kind of set the record straight on. And that is, in a larger context, it's kind of about how the animals were treated. And particularly the bullhook. And the movie, I think, didn't treat this correctly either. So a bullhook is something you use to make sure that this 4-ton animal goes where you want it to go. It's the thing, and again, this is what I saw in Ringling. In the Ringling, the animals were treated very well. They were treated better than the clowns were, by far. Gunter Gable Williams was like there, and there was no way on earth any of his animals were going to be treated as anything but children, because he's one of those people who are like speak to the animals kind of people. So a bullhook is, imagine like a broomstick sort of cut in half. And then on one end, there's a sort of a metal peg that's a couple inches long, and it's got kind of a hook, sort of. It's like it curves over, but it's not pointy at all. And it's never used for jabbing or hitting. That would be idiotic. Which is what we saw
in the movie.
Yeah, that is crazy. What you do is they would reach up, and I'm trying not to gesture, would reach up and sort of kind of tug on the elephant's armpit, sort of. So like kind of reach behind its front leg, just to kind of say, hey, here I am. Think more like, how you have a really big dog. I don't know if Luke, I know you have a big-ish dog. But if you got someone's got like a big, like a pitty or a Rottweiler, one of those dogs that's like all neck, and then they have a collar that has prongs on it, right? And the prongs aren't to hurt the animal; it's just so that they'll feel it, right? Because otherwise they won't even notice. It's the same thing. It's a prong. It's a hey, come along, let's go. Now, this is not to say that other circuses, other places abuse their animals, but the fact that the bullhook, particularly in the movie, was portrayed as an instrument of abuse, and that would be like portraying a leash as an instrument of abuse. It's not. This is a gigantic animal, and you really need her to go where you want her to go for your safety, the audience's safety, and her safety. And you can't like pat her on the leg. She's not gonna feel it. It's all like she's got thick skin. So they just this little tug in the armpit, just kind of say, "This way, hon." Burp, burp. But I'll tell you, those animals were happy and clean and well cared for. They had chains around their ankle, but that was just to, because you can't have an elephant just wandering around backstage. But they were all together. They could touch each other. They could look at each other. The day before I left, I went over and got to meet some of them, and that was an amazing experience because they just woofled me all over with their trunks, and it was just incredible. So these were happy animals, and obviously in the book and in the movie that was not the case. But I kind of want to just make sure that was clear that what the bullhook was, and it's not. It's a tool and can be misused, but that's not what it's made for. So that's really my own little
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That, I mean, like many tools, you can misuse them, right? Like that you could abuse an animal with it, but it's not its design. That makes sense to me. Now, I did read that I think even Ringling doesn't have elephants anymore, right?
Well, Ringling doesn't have anything anymore. They're closed.
Okay.
Yeah, they're gone. But yeah, so a few years before they closed, they got rid of their elephants. They have a retreat, not a retreat, what's the word I'm like, preserve, a home for elephants where it's designed for them to be, a safe place for them. And I've actually seen it, and it's, again, very clean, very well cared for. And so all the elephants went there. And so, yeah, for a few years, they didn't have any elephants. And then they closed down completely because people weren't going to the circus anymore. They couldn't keep up.
I assume there are some other circuses still going, right?
They're small ones. I mean, there's Cirque du Soleil, which is a different kind of circus entirely. It's a very theatrical sort of thing. And they've never had animals. They're just a different thing. But there are small circuses. Yeah, like Circus Vargas, that still exists. That's probably the biggest touring one. But there's, you'll probably find them in your, they'll show up in the parking lot of the mall. And you should go to them. They're kind of cool. It's usually like a family and 3 or 4 other people, and the same people are taking your tickets as are on the performing. And it's kind of a neat experience. And it's a nice historical bit of American history, that you can't get anywhere else. So,
yeah,
but
I like that.
Animals are expensive. They're really expensive, and you have to take care of them. There's no reason to go. Again, I can't speak for everyone. And, there's the question of should animals ever be in captivity? And that I don't know. But I will say that the animals that I saw at Ringling were treated very well.
Yeah, I'm at least happy to know that it's not like across the board, I am happy to hear that there are cases where that's not clearly the case. Did you guys want to talk about any general things before we move into sort of the filmmaker or anything with this story here? Did you maybe let the audience know what your viewing experience was like? Like, how many times have you seen this movie? Yeah,
that's a good question. I want to know, Mary, what your history is with this project. Like, did you read the book before you saw the film originally, or what was it? Because I think we've both talked about, James and I, that we're brand new to this.
I had read the book, around the time it first came out, because I think it was because of the circus thing. I'm like, oh, hey, circus. And so I read it, and I enjoyed it. And then I recently reread it. And I enjoyed it. Didn't see it as a romance as much as I saw it as just sort of a historical story. But again, I'm not a romance reader either, so...
Yeah. It's a squishy genre, really, It kind of... Yeah, because even when I was calling it romance, because I think it is one, it definitely has a lot of other things going on. It's definitely historical fantasy, or not historical fantasy, historical fiction, right? And that maybe is even its primary genre, with romance thrown in. I would agree with that. But just like all genre discussions, it's always going to get a little difficult to agree on anything because there's so many nuances to all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I did want to say with the film here, I was happy to kind of feel what you guys are talking about there, like sort of the story. It doesn't feel like a purely romantic story. Like I think they did their due diligence of making the set feel believable and making an immersive environment of like the Depression, on a train, traveling with the circus, like all of these things. I think the movie did a great job of kind of portraying all of that.
So, yeah, I had struggled with this movie a little bit. And it's not that I didn't like it. In general, it's more just that I was really struggling to figure out how I felt about it. And there's something about it that I've been trying to figure out and put my finger on that is keeping me from enjoying it as much as I did the book. Just my initial thoughts. I'm not giving my vote yet, but
sounds like you are.
I don't know. I actually want to have this conversation and see if it changes the way I feel at all, because normally I have a pretty strong conviction about a movie after I watch it, and this one, like, I'm a little on the fence about it. So I definitely want to talk about it and kind of like get into some of the things and see if maybe just discussing it with you two will help me kind of come along on the movie.
We're here for you, Luke. We'll talk it through.
Okay.
I agree. I am conflicted, and I have specific reasons that I can point to as to why. But just to give an overall general kind of word or sentence to describe how I think I feel about this movie is I think that this movie is a product of diminishing returns. I think that we've seen this sort of movie like take out the historical context. And I think it's a movie we've seen a lot before. I do think there are a lot of things that I do really enjoy about this movie. I think, like I was saying, like I think that this set really brought to life this whole world, seeing the animals. And I do think it was shot. I think there are many shots and tons of scenes that are brilliantly lit. They look amazing. And then there are other scenes that should be like big moment scenes that are kind of flat. And so it's kind of like an inconsistency thing. But overall, yeah, I'm pretty mixed on it personally.
When you say you've seen this movie before, what movies are you referencing?
I think the filmmaker set out to make a movie very similar to The Notebook. I think the comparisons that we made in the book with the book, saying like this reminds me of The Notebook, I think they set out to make something very similar to The Notebook. And like it felt like that to me. Maybe it felt like, I don't know if derivative seems like a really extreme word for it, but like just like having seen this movie before, barring the one or two things that that are unique to this movie.
They really relied on the setting to do a lot of work, didn't they? Like Circus, that like they expected that to carry a lot of weight.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting because we get a few scenes kind of showing the circus being wondrous and this really rich, kind of gorgeous thing, but it still feels like proportionately we see a lot more darkness and a lot more of the underbelly. And in general, I found this movie to be a lot less fun than the book was. Not to say that stuff wasn't in the book, but it seemed like where the focus was a lot more on a lot of the darker, more depressing elements. And just in as amount of like screen time it got, it felt like it was kind of oppressive throughout the story for me, which maybe is affecting a little bit of my judgment on it.
It was visually dark too. I mean, I remember like there's a lot of times that sometimes I was watching this on my phone. I had to like cup my hands around to even see the screen because it was just so visually dark, which you'd think, oh, this is a movie about a circus. That's usually a very bright thing. Yeah. In fact, that it's just like, I can't see anything on the screen. I don't know if that was, some sort of thematic choice or something.
Well, a lot of the train scenes were at night.
That's what I was going to say. I actually remember like thinking the exact same thing during the train scenes, which reminds me of the time when we covered Game of Thrones with we did like the season 8 Game of Thrones thing, and there was the whole debacle about like, was the scene too dark, the war scene, like was the Battle of Winterfell too dark, was it too light, like all this stuff. And I was like, is this a because I'm not currently using my normal TV, I'm having to use a hotel TV. So I was like, is this like a TV setting thing, or is this just like, it was the scene where he climbs out and is on the train on the outside of the train at night. I feel like I couldn't make out any shapes. But maybe it was just a TV thing for me. Okay, I just wanted to talk about the filmmaker a little bit. His name is Francis Lawrence, and from what I can tell, he kind of cut his teeth making music videos and commercials and things like that before moving into narrative-based things. Some of his bigger movies that I feel like people have definitely heard of are Constantine and I Am Legend. Those are two films that he directed before this film, which was Water for Elephants in 2011. And then he would go on to direct 3 of the 4 Hunger Games films.
Oh, wow. All but which one?
I believe the first one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think he directed the last 3.
Interesting. I mean, and I Am Legend is another potential project for us. Richard Matheson novella, I want to call it. Maybe short story. So we might cover that one day. It's
kind of interesting to see him go from something like Constantine and I Am Legend into Water for Elephants. Mm-hmm. So I went digging and tried to see sort of, if he had a background that kind of backed any of this up. And I realized that he worked a lot with female artists, like female solo artists making music videos. Because like Constantine is a very like comic booky movie. It is, I mean, it's based off comic, I believe it's based off a comic book.
Yeah, no, it is.
I just didn't know if that iteration was or not, the one with Keanu Reeves. I think it is. I'm pretty sure it is.
I think
maybe it's like some offshoot, whatever. Anyway, that's a very specific type of movie. And then to go to I Am Legend, which is like, what is that? Post-apocalyptic sci-fi, I guess, into Water for Elephants. It felt like kind of a jump, but he's worked with Avril Lavigne, Janet Jackson, Jennifer Lopez, Lady Gaga, Gwen Stefani, Pink, Shakira. So Missy Elliott. He's worked with tons and tons of people, as well as the Black Eyed Peas, Green Day. He's done tons of Backstreet Boys, done tons of music videos.
Okay.
So just kind of interesting to give context to the kind of director that this movie was made by. With that, I think we should move into the kind of spoilers section itself.
Well, first, I wanted to ask you, do you have any information about specifically all the animals they had on set. I don't know if you saw anything about that in your research. I was curious because I was like, these are definitely real animals for many of the shots. I mean, there's a couple of CGI times, but for the most part, they seem very real. So I'm curious to know what that was like.
So I actually did find some stuff about the animals. I wanted to, because of all the use of all these animals in sort of the circus setting, I wanted to know, how filming went with the animals. And I found out that the American Humane Association monitored the animal action. All of the stuff that went on with the animals was monitored by them. No animals were harmed. It has been confirmed. And yet there was sort of a scandal. I don't know if around the time that this movie came out, there was sort of like kind of a big debacle that happened. I'm not sure. Did you guys hear about this when it was coming out at all?
On this movie? Okay. No.
Yes. So a video surfaced, I believe released by ADI, which is Animal Defenders International. Video was released of Ty, which is the name of this elephant that was the actor in this film, being abused with sort of like electric shock hook. They're like hooks, and then like also like electric shock sort of taser type things. And apparently the video, there was no date associated with it, but eventually it was found that it was from like 2005. And so the people who were actually in possession or who were the owners of this elephant, were under fire. Like there was this video of this specific elephant. And clearly I think it's because you can tell from the colors of this elephant in the front, like it's kind of easily recognizable, but it was being, I guess, I don't want to say tortured, but it was definitely being abused. And originally this story was released because Water for Elephants was coming out, and this elephant was kind of in the news because of that. And then they were like, well, this is a video of this elephant being abused. And so like there's investigations done, and eventually they found that like the people who owned it during the filming didn't own it in 2005. And then it went basically down a rabbit hole of them trying to figure out who did own it and why it was being abused seemingly. And I guess the people who they eventually found were abusing it said that there were certain, it was doctored, like the video had been doctored, as well as there was like sections of it that were being cut out, and it's like kind of out of context. So I guess that's where it lies. I don't know if there were any arrests made or anything more than that. All I could really find was that like there was sort of this scandal that was going on at the time that this movie was coming out with this specific elephant. But all that is to say, I guess, that it's been confirmed there were people on set. No animals were harmed in the filming of this movie. Yeah. I felt like it was Ty, the elephant who was the actor in this movie, was involved with that. So I thought it should be known that unfortunately this animal was mistreated in some way at some point.
Right. And that's a shame because I thought Ty was maybe the biggest star in the whole movie.
She was wonderful. Yeah, she was the best part.
Yeah, adorable. The intellect of elephants always blows me away. Like I talked about in the book episode, it's just, they are just unfathomably smart. They can do anything they want to do. Like I don't know. Like when I see them go up on that handstand, I cannot believe they can manipulate those massive bodies like that.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, it just reminded me of a good story. I have a circus story I'm going to jump in with. So when we were first starting off, we were in winter quarters. We were training, like rehearsing and everything. So it was like setting the show up. And, I was the 1st of May. I was brand new. And one of the other clowns said, all right, now you just got to watch out for the elephants. You got to stay away from their private parts. I'm like, yeah, okay. I think that's going to happen. He's like, well, you know where their private parts are, right? I'm like, he goes, on the bottom of their feet. I'm like, what? Yeah, because if you touch that, you're fucked. It's like, they step on you, you're fucked. And yeah, so that's that level of humor. As soon as you were talking about the elephants, it reminded me of that.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine getting stepped on by one would be, not a good experience.
It'd be done.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't step on you. They're so careful.
Wow. And so 1st of May just means new, or is there more to that?
No, 1st of May is new. Because it used to be they'd start on May 1st. It's like when a new season would start. And so you'd be 1st of May. But yeah, anyone new to the circus is a 1st of May.
Cool.
Interesting. So we're 1st of May of this novel and book.
Oh, there you go. Very nice. And now we have to begin the hazing. Please remove your trousers.
Oh, boy.
If you guys are ready, I'm going to read a synopsis, and then from that, I think we can springboard into some of the differences and some of our favorite scenes, actors, performances, things like that.
Things we wanted to talk about, yeah. And this is a pretty brief kind of just overview synopsis, right?
Yes. So, Jacob Jankowski, a veterinary student, is close to graduating when a terrible tragedy forces him to leave school. With nowhere else to go, he hops on a passing train and finds it belongs to a traveling circus. Jacob takes a job as an animal caretaker and meets Marlena, a beautiful circus performer. Their shared compassion for a special elephant named Rosie leads to love. But August, Marlena's cruel husband, stands in their way.
Yeah, Hans Landa.
Do you think that people were worried he might be getting typecast for this? Christoph Waltz had just kind of been he had been a Nazi and was now sort of an animal abusing, woman abusing husband.
Yeah, he plays a villain well.
Oh, he was so good in this. Like, he was the one, like, I would watch a movie with just him and Rosie. Like, honestly, I didn't need the other two at all.
Him versus Rosie, yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I was going to say earlier, like, saying that Rosie was the best part, I mean, that was her competition, that she had to outshine Christoph Waltz himself, who was putting on a good performance, I think.
Yeah. I agree. He was, I think this is Pattinson when he was still kind of trying to find what kind of actor he was going to be and becoming the performer I think he is now. Reese Witherspoon also kind of had a sort of change in her career, I think, after this movie. She, her in Big Little Lies, and she's a producer now on all kinds of amazing stuff.
Was she was in that movie Wild, or am I getting that wrong?
Yeah.
She was in Wild, yeah. And I think she was nominated for that, or maybe even won for that.
Yeah, she carried that whole movie. Was that before or after?
Yeah.
That was after this?
I want to say that was after this, yeah. I think that was like 2013, if I had to guess.
Yeah.
And she was good in this, too.
She's good in everything, but she didn't have much to do.
Right, that's the thing. And we talked about in the book episode, the character Marlena really didn't have anything to do. I thought they gave her a little bit more to do in this movie, but unfortunately, like, not enough to chew on to really give like a great performance that would, sort of like Christoph Waltz. I think he just gets to chew scenery as that villain.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and he has such a good, I mean, he was well cast because the character is described as being mercurial and having this, can be charming and win you over on 1 minute, and then the next minute just turn to this utter villain, just darkness and anger. And he flips that switch so well, right? Like, that's what he's really good at.
And God, I hated him when he flipped that switch. I was like, this guy sucks. I can't wait to see the elephant murder you.
And just since we're starting at the beginning, the one thing that, like, the first note I have when I was writing this is they could have let him finish the exam.
Yeah, that's exactly my thought.
Let the guy finish the exam for 2 hours. I understand they were compressing from the book, but like, hang on.
Yeah, and they tell him in the room.
I know.
Like, he's in the room, and they're like, "We're going to tell you about this right now." They don't even take him to the hallway. Harsh.
I was just, I was like, damn, I was like thinking about the time period. I was like, maybe the time period had something to do with it and they wanted to rip the Band-Aid off and let him know like right away or whatever it was. And I was trying to make excuses. And then I was like, you know what? Nobody would do that. He's in like a massive exam at the end of literally his final exam to be a vet.
Yeah. So I want to back it up even further because the framing device, much of the framing of this gets omitted. All the stuff at the nursing home is basically gone. And we start off with the elderly Jacob coming to the circus. And one of the first things we get is him making fun of this younger guy for having the rings in his face. And I thought it was a really weird spot to start with this character.
Me too.
Because I liked Jacob, the old man in the book. I rooted for him. I felt sorry for him. But that was like the one moment towards the end where it felt like a very crotchety old man. And I was like, I like him. I'll let him get away with this. And that was presented at the end of the book. Here we get it right at the beginning where I don't know this man at all. And so my very first thing is I'm like, I don't know about this guy. He seems out of touch.
Yeah, it was pretty, I don't know. And the line, too, was like, get the rings out of your face and maybe something. I don't remember exactly what he said, but I was like, this is like textbook, just like, I don't know, ageism or something. Like, he just is like,
you young whippersnapper, get off my lawn. Yeah.
It weird. Odd. It's not a good, like, you want the audience to like this guy. I don't know that this is the way to do it. Right at the beginning here.
Yeah. But you did a cute little bow tie. They used the color, right? They had the red and blue on the circus. I thought that was a deliberate choice.
I didn't even think about that. Yeah, I could see that. So I wanted to mention Paul Schneider, he's the guy who rolls up with the wheelchair, who's also with the person with the rings, the piercing.
He's the guy he tells the story to.
Yeah, his name's Charlie in the story. And
right.
the only place I know this actor from is Parks and Rec. Have you guys seen it?
I was wondering why he was familiar looking.
Yes.
That's the only like frame of
yes.
reference I have for him, and I really do not like him really very much in Parks and Rec. So when he rolled up, I was like, so we got the old guy who's being a dick to young people. We got this guy who I already don't like from his role in Parks and Rec, but maybe not fair. But it was just I was shocked to see him.
Thank you. I was like, where do I know this guy from? What is it? And I should have looked at IMDb. Yes.
So let's talk about Robert Pattinson in this movie. Because I think, and I feel bad a little bit, but the guy's, he's obviously got talent. He's going to play Batman. He was in The Lighthouse. He's been in other things where he's shown that he's a good actor. I don't think he does a good job with this role. And I think it's one of the main reasons I struggled with this movie is there was a lot of times where his emotional notes just felt a little bit off. He had this sort of weird grin he would do a lot of the time that I don't know, it just gave me like a weird feeling. Like this guy, it just felt wrong. And whenever you're watching acting, you want it to be seamless, you want it to believe it. And I just didn't believe it. And that's never good.
It was odd because the character doesn't have much to do either. Like he's very passive. Yeah. Jacob is. There's a lot of things where it's like, I mean, in the book too, where it's like, what, tell him you're a vet or tell him you're at least partly like, why are you, mm-hmm. Just like, what? He just doesn't, he's not real active. And so maybe that's where he was going. But yeah, I was like, he was like a mannequin, just nothing. He was just kind of walking around. And yeah, it was very odd.
He was trying to give like a subtle performance, but I don't think it was really working.
It's interesting because I made a note of a couple of moments where I felt like I could see flashes of a good actor. But I tend to agree with you because I think there was a lot of that brooding, the sort of like post-Twilight brooding still mixed with maybe weird, like you said, maybe weird direction, maybe, just weird choices were being made. But yeah, he did have sort of when an actor is, in a certain portrayal, they're supposed to make the audience feel a certain way. I don't think it's necessarily like supposed to say like, be like, oh, I'm sad now. You guys should know that I feel sad. I think they're supposed to make us feel sad as well. Mm-hmm. And I think I think I agree with you where I wasn't really clicking because whatever emotion I was supposed to feel, I don't know that he was necessarily portraying it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it almost felt like it was like, it just cause it didn't quite fit. I do want to say that I thought there were a couple moments where I thought he did a good job.
Okay. So I like what you said about it maybe being sort of an awkward phase for him where he was sort of transitioning into a different sort of actor, and I'll grant him that. But yeah, just for just based off this one movie, I think he was the weak link, honestly, from all of our leads, and I think that he does hold the movie back a little bit, unfortunately. Not to say that it was perfect otherwise.
In his defense, there weren't a lot of scenes where he had a lot to work with. And part of it was the pacing. Because I was making notes that he doesn't even meet Marlena until 30 minutes in. So that whole first, he's got all these long scenes where we're just standing there. And so he didn't have much to even portray. So that made it even harder.
I agree with that. And there were times where it seemed like he wasn't given any direction at all. It was like, the scene's going to be going on. We're going to pan over to you and we're going to show your reaction to the scene. But it never seemed to really be evoking anything in particular. It seemed purposeless.
I have a great example of where I really didn't buy it. Anytime he was interacting with the elephant, I felt like he was just laughing through it. And I understand it must be weird to interact with an elephant in that way.
Yeah.
And it probably would be kind of funny. But it wasn't necessarily laugh worthy moments.
Yes.
When he was interacting with
his laughing was almost always weird.
Yes. And so whenever he was interacting with the elephant is a good example of where I just was like, this isn't really fitting, right?
I didn't get a vibe from him that he was someone who loved animals.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe that's not good because you got to sell that for that character. Yeah. And can we mention how in the and I know it's probably for time's sake, but in the book, Jacob, when he first looks at the horse, he's like, yeah, this horse is going to need to have bed rest and oats and be taken care of and all this stuff. In the movie, he looks at it and he's like, you got to put it down.
Yeah, done. Goodbye.
100% for time. Definitely for time. But yeah, it's hilarious.
But it hurts the character because it makes him seem kind of brutal. I don't know. I mean, he's not, it's supposed to be an act of kindness, but man, I don't know.
The pacing was very strange, I feel, like in the adaptation. That they spent a lot of time on setting it up and then like rushed through the whole relationship, and then boom, there's Rosie, and then boom, it's so I was like, well, oh, here we are. So I felt like that was kind of strange. And so things like that whole horse thing, that was like 10 minutes. Right? It wasn't even like last time it was days and they're working on it. And then they don't even tell her, right? That they keep Marlena away from it. This time she is right there and he's like, bye, push. Like, what?
Yeah. I wanted to mention I think it was an obvious choice, but I think it was ultimately the right one. And I think I probably would have made the same decision. And that's to combine August and Al in the movie. I think it was a smart thing to do. It gives you clarity in a way that the book has. You kind of have two villains, and here you have just the one.
And their names both start with A.
Yeah, so it made sense to combine them into one character. But you do, I mean, it's one of those things that like it works better in a movie. But in the book, I kind of liked that there was more than one person sort of working against Jacob's interests, and they had subtly different motivations for doing so. Which just made the situation a little more complicated and maybe a little more realistic to me. Yeah, and I kind of missed it, but I get the decision. I think I probably would have made the same decision. So what are you going to do?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I think that I actually think I prefer it because there's sort of the power dynamic is definitely different from the book, but having him be the actual boss of the entire show, I think made it so that it was like much more dire when he would get into conflicts with August and things like that. Like it was like, not only did it did it create like a shortcut in terms of like explaining how, their relationship would create tension in the circus and all that kind of thing, but it also set up like how powerful this character would be in opposition to Jacob. But I don't know. I think that was one of the things that I did like.
Well, I mean, I agree, and I think it's the right decision to make for the movie, for sure.
I feel like we've been kind of negative so far.
Yeah.
But if you guys wanted to try to talk about some positive things, what specifically stood out to you as something maybe that you weren't expecting or that was surprising that you liked, or just in general, what were your favorite things?
I really liked the design. I thought the production design was really nice because I felt like I got a really good view of how things were. I said I felt like it was very accurate, and it was also evoked it really well. I loved and as soon as maybe this sounds dumb, I don't know, but I really love the costuming. I like what they put Marlena in. Her outfits I thought were they were beautiful. They were period. I think they also reflected her really well. So it looked great, except for the parts where we couldn't see anything. When we could see stuff, I felt it looked really good.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I specifically wanted to shout out Jack Fish, who was the production designer. Almost all of the circus wagon carts that appeared in the movie were the original carts from the Ringling Brothers shows. During production, the Circus World Museum in Baraboo, Wisconsin, shipped its circus carts to California to be used for filming. As of late, they are now back in their original displays.
Wow, that's cool.
I thought that was really cool when I read that because I agree with you. The costuming was great. The time period, it just feels very nostalgic in terms of like a faraway fairy tale story for us at this point. And then just to have that sort of realism, like when they were there with the lions in the carts and like he played that trick on him with the lion that didn't have any teeth. I think because of the set design, I fully bought into it. And that's to say, like a lot of the tent scenes where they're setting the tents up and the score swells and we get sort of like the light coming through the tent. I thought a lot of that stuff looked really great. And I thought there was some very, very solid filmmaking, like cinematography and some great, specifically camera techniques.
So yeah, I want to just jump in and agree that in particular, the setting up of the circus whole sequence was kind of a highlight of the movie for me. Like I love that whole thing. There's a shot of the kind of tent pole getting pounded into the ground by like 5 guys standing in a circle, each taking like a hit in sequence. And I just thought that was a great shot and a great moment. That just really sells the time period. And then, yeah, like you said, when he first is like seeing the performances, it really worked. And, in particular with that, I was impressed with a lot of the stuff Reese Witherspoon was doing because I kept looking for moments where I was like, this has got to be a stunt double. And I was amazed at how often I was like, no, that seems like her. I don't know if they're doing digital trickery or like what, but there was so many times where it felt like she was really on top of that elephant. And do you know anything about like how they were able to achieve that?
They probably put her up on top of an elephant.
Yeah, maybe.
It's not really that big a deal.
Yeah.
You stand on the leg, and you sit there and you hold on. It's not that big a deal.
Yeah, but I mean, like actors usually don't do anything. I mean, they often won't even ride horses, period, much less an elephant. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, props to her if she really did that. I just think that is impressive, you know, because it's a long way up. At the very least, if you fall, that's a long way to fall at the very minimum.
But you're on a pretty big surface, you know? Like, seriously, because you've got your legs, you know, and they're behind her ears, and you've got the harness to hold on to. You're pretty secure up there. I never got to go up on one, which I regret to this day. But, you know, I had a bunch of friends that just hop right up there. It was no big deal.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I as far as I could tell, I was trying to look for it as well, Luke, for like any sort of like a stunt double in there. I think she was doing a lot of the stuff, and the stuff that was particularly impressive to me was the sort of acrobatic stuff she was doing. Like she would get up on like one of those poles, those vault poles, and she'd do like some flips around it and stuff. And maybe you know they cut away and do a shot of her rolling, but there were moments where she was like planking out over top of it and stuff, and it was clearly her. Things like that. I think she definitely
on the trunk, like just doing all sorts of like. It seems like she almost developed a routine with this animal, like for real. It seemed like.
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe they fooled me, but that's what it looked like.
Yeah, potentially. And I did try to find something about it, but I just couldn't find anything that said specifically that she like did any full-on training. I think we definitely need to talk about the fact that this movie's called Water for Elephants, but whereas in the book I think it was paid off. I think people could be forgiven for leaving this movie and not understanding why it's called Water for Elephants. It's kind of, there's sort of a blink and you'll miss it moment where they talk about Water for Elephants.
Yeah.
But I don't know if people would necessarily catch on to why this is called Water for Elephants.
Yeah, and we mentioned in our coverage of the last episode that we thought that was probably some sort of saying, but we weren't sure. Do you know, Mary, if that is like a saying in the circus?
No, I think it's just a rube thing. You know, a rube would say that's a, you know, oh yeah, I carried water for elephants. Like, no, you freaking didn't. But I,
right.
You know, again, the animals were so protected in my circus that you wouldn't. Like I didn't carry any water for any elephants or any food or anything. Like we weren't allowed to go do that. That wasn't our deal. So, But yeah, no, I'm not familiar with that.
It's kind of weird because the explanation in the book was like you couldn't possibly carry enough water for them.
No.
But then I kept thinking like, well, I don't know if that's true. You know,
yeah, no,
a couple buckets at a time is probably something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, sure, you need a lot, but I don't know. It seemed like a weird definition.
It's insane how much they eat. And okay, so I don't know if this is too gross, but we'd be walking around the hippodrome track, which is the track that go around the outside, right? So it's think like like when you're in your football field, you've got the track that you run around outside, and then there's the circus in the middle. And so we walk around the hippodrome track, and sometimes you'd be behind the elephant. And, you know, okay, the poop was the poop, right? And that's but dude, when they peed, holy cow. It was just like, it just kept coming and coming. You're like, my God, you expected it to get smaller. So if that's how much came out, I can't imagine how much went in. Like, it's just, wow.
Fair enough.
So
I did want to now. After that, I wanted to I wanted to lean directly into. Do you guys have an interpretation of the title? Because I was kind of trying to think about so Water for Elephants. Clearly, you know, that's like the joke being made there. But there's got to be some sort of like love representative, like he's carrying water for her, kind of like carrying love for her kind of thing. Like he could never have enough love or something like that. Do you think there's something there in the title, or am I just like, I don't know, am I going too far with it?
So it's something that you would do, that you think you can do to care for something, but you can't actually do it, right? So he thinks he can care for Marlena, but he does.
But maybe he can't because of August or something?
Or August thinks he's caring for her, but he's not.
Something like that.
Yeah. Well, there's also sort of the insider-outsider perspective of the insiders know what this means, the outsiders think it means something, and we see this sort of conflict of that where we have, in the book especially, we have the other character who's claiming to have done this thing, yet the person who knows the circus knows that he's lying, and then he gets hit with that. When he's a rube himself, he gets sort of hit with that. So it seems like the difference between actually being of the circus and not being of the circus. is surrounding this.
I think that it's also leans it like that's also there with like August thinks that he loves her, but Jacob sees that he doesn't actually love her. Maybe there's something like there's sort of like Marlena. Yeah, maybe there's something there for him to see, like because he's in the inside of the circus, as it were within this metaphor. He can see that he doesn't truly love her, and like that's sort of an insider thing. Like I think that's probably what it is there. If I had to put my finger on it.
Yeah, so speaking of August and Christoph Waltz, I just wanted to kind of shine a light on him for a minute. I think we've already mentioned that we thought he was good. There's a moment where Jacob has to essentially pitch himself, and I was thinking like how intimidating would it be to have to give an interview to Christoph Waltz in his full like villain mode. He's got such menace just like beneath every charming thing he's saying that it would just be so disarming.
That scene where he has them act the little scene out where he's like, "Oh, here, I've got this great idea."
Yeah.
He's making them do that. I was like, yeah, that stood out. That was an amazing scene. I thought that was really good.
I wrote down that I think Christoph Waltz, I mean, he's an excellent actor. He's very, very good at being a villain. And in this movie, I wrote down that he is delightfully evil because he is sort of delighting in it with sort of the charm. And it does kind of remind me of his character from Inglourious Basterds, because it is like there's the charm and like the flipping on a dime, and like he's kind of tricking you. He's making you think that you're okay, but at the same time, just like he uses that kind of calming voice, and then is just like slowly flips into sort of like a just complete monster.
Well, and in control, I think that's one of the things that really impresses me is that whenever he's in a scene in this movie and in Inglourious Basterds, and whenever he's playing this kind of character, he just commands the scene, and he feels like he has all the control in the scene.
He brought tension, right? Like like there was no other source of tension. It was just him, and I think maybe that's part of the thing that I was feeling lacked, because when Christoph Waltz wasn't on screen, there was no tension. But as soon as he was, and then at the end, when they actually came to blows, when they were really fighting, it was such a release, because it was finally all that tension was building up the whole thing. And then finally, yes, punch him, and he's punching, yes. Yeah. So, yeah.
I do like, they took out the second time, because in the book, the whole like abusing Rosie thing happens twice. And both times he doesn't do anything. And I'm glad they didn't try and do that in the movie, because it just would not, like, the one time was enough. Like, I was ready to murder August after that.
They kind of did it twice, where he was pushing her, he was poking her with the bull hook like an idiot to get her to get out of the car she was in. And then during the show, and this was weird too, during the spec, when they were going around, he came over and started like threatening Rosie during the spec, and then got mad at her. Like, that didn't make any sense. But
no, it doesn't make any sense. He's you're right. I mean, and that was kind of the two times, I guess. So you're right. But I felt like it was a little different, and I think Jacob reacted more in the movie than he did in the book. In the book, I was very frustrated with how little he did. He was like, "Well, I can't do anything. I'm mad about it, but I'm not going to do anything." And at least in the movie, he like tried to stop him. And tried to say, you can't do this. And they followed him to the cart and like literally tried to physically stop him from going in and had to be restrained. That did not happen in the book.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about the animal abuse just because, it happens in the book. But for me, personally, like there's a difference between reading about animal abuse and like physically seeing animal abuse. And it was I don't know. I think that
it was hard to watch.
It was very hard to watch, and I was getting like physically angry. Like I was actually getting like really upset by it, which I wasn't expecting. I think it was like I was in the book. I was like, oh, this sucks. I hate that this kind of stuff happens. But seeing it was a different story for me. So I think it was effective, and it did what it was supposed to do.
In the book, it happened off screen too. We stayed with Jacob. And we didn't see it happen, whereas in the film,
he mentions he could like hear it or something.
Yeah, but we never saw it, and this was saw it. We saw him hit, and that was that was hard. I didn't like that at all.
It's affecting stuff, and I think it's even more affecting because we've not only have we seen that, but we've also seen Rosie. I was thinking in particular the moment where she pulls her stake out walks over to the big bucket of lemonade, dips her trunk in, takes a drink, goes back over and puts the steak back in the ground. And like when she did that, I'm just in love with this elephant now. And they just did such a good job. And you're seeing a real elephant do it, it's really impressive to see that.
And then maybe they need to learn to put her steak in a little better.
Yeah, it's just funny because it's like I'll leave it in, but I can take it out whenever I want, guys. Yeah, it's pretty funny to think about. Yeah, so moving into the end, they did some changes with the final showdown during the Stampede. And in particular, correct me if I'm wrong, we see August trying to strangle Marlena and kill her. And then we see Jacob try and intervene. And I absolutely love this moment, and maybe for like a weird reason, but I just loved how he tried to intervene, and the big guy, I think it's Blackie, who keeps punching him, and the guy is totally unaffected by it. Like he could be laughing at him, but he's not. He's just not even annoyed. It's just nothing. And I loved that because so many movies, the lead character is like all of a sudden a badass.
Yeah.
And I just love that he is not a badass at all. He can't throw a punch. He has no chance of besting this guy. And then it takes Rosie to intervene. And then, I just thought it was also ironic that we see, I don't know if you've seen Inglourious Basterds. I don't know if this is makes sense to you or not, but we see Hans Landa again strangling a blonde woman in a movie. So I don't know what's up with that. He's typecast again, I guess.
I really thought we were going to see Rosie, like my imagination of the scene. It's like a straight poke through the back of the head. Straight, we're going to see a hole through the front of his.
See, I never even didn't get that from the book either. You guys were saying about how it's stabbed. Like I always thought it was a thwunk. Like you
gotcha.
Well, yeah, I think it says something about splitting the head open. I think is actually how it's
split
described.
open like an egg. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
that's
back.
pretty bloody, regardless of whatever that is. That's pretty.
So I think based on the animal abuse, I just formed my own murder. That I would perform on this guy. It was I don't know. I like that Rosie did it. I like that they actually had a real elephant do it. Even if it was acting. Oh, and I did see something. I was watching something that was talking about sort of how they achieved some of it. Clearly, CG augmented for Christoph Waltz character for August stabbing Rosie in that scene with the bull hook. Bull hook. I wanted to say bullhorn for some reason.
Please
with
stop.
the bull.
Yeah, it wouldn't be as painful, I don't think, to be stabbed with a bullhorn.
So the bullhook, they're sort of like they lunge and then they just like CG make the stabbing look more realistic. Same thing with the Rosie hitting Christoph Waltz in the back of the head. There's like sort of I think they probably cut a frame or two to make it look like it was like more of a violent hit as well. And, CG augmented that. So, I appreciate that. I think you could see it. Oh, which also reminds me that, this came out in 2011 and I think most of that stampede was CG at the end.
Yeah.
And I thought it looked pretty solid. Like it didn't break my immersion or anything.
No. Yeah, I agree. What did you think of the change of having it be sort of this moment where August is trying to kill Marlena?
For some reason, I felt like it was implied in the book that would be the eventual outcome anyway. So I think it was just kind of like taking that next extra step to make it more violent.
Yes, I mean, so you liked it. It sounds like.
I was fine with it. I liked it. I don't know if it made it better or worse personally.
I think it made it a little more dramatic, a little more urgent, and because honestly, again, visually, you think about that stampede. All that happens is he stands there and he sees Rosie and he's like, "Don't do it," and Rosie does it. And if that's not a climax of a movie,
That's true, yeah.
So I could see why they did it. I just thought it was interesting that Blackie was just like, yeah, no, he's going to kill her, so I'm just going to stand there and don't stop her, because he's killing her. He's choking her to death, but that's cool. Like, really? This is okay with you?
Yeah, right? So I did want to talk about one more scene. Marlena and Jacob they run away to the hotel, they have sex together. Then they they go back by choice this time, right? Or no, they don't go back.
No, they
she's in the book they go by choice, and she's kidnapped in this. How do we feel about that change? Did you feel like that? I think that again added some more drama, and then it led directly into him kind of grabbing the knife and heading down to try to kill August to find them in bed together.
Yeah, and then she looks at him, which is different than the book too.
Yeah. And he's a sound sleeper. Well, plus also, I don't know if I hadn't read the book, if I would have understood, because he comes back. First of all, I was like, that's a long ass walk, but okay. Because the train left. So he walked.
It got stuck on a tree clearly.
Yeah,
for a long time.
Because trees always stop trains.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, so he gets there and he goes back to his car, and he's like, "Oh, Camel and Walter are gone," and you figure something bad happened, but you don't really the fact that they've been red lighted isn't really made clear. She explains it later.
In the scene, I don't think we realize, but later someone says like, "Oh, they were killed. They found their bodies and they're dead." But I can see what you're saying, like being on the same page as it was happening. I don't know if
it's like they're gone, but where did they go? Like, why are they gone? Yeah, I can see that.
We also needed more Queenie. I was a little disappointed they didn't have enough Queenie.
Not enough Queenie.
It's a sad moment in both book and movie, and it kind of comes out of nowhere when those two guys die, though. I didn't feel as close to them maybe in the film as I kind of did in the book, but still, it's pretty brutal and just senseless violence, and it definitely kind of seals the fate of August. Like, this is obviously too far after everything else you did.
It is funny when we read these stories and then watch the movies, how sometimes I'll pull in the context that I have for the book. So, I think I liked those characters and felt, I was upset when they died even more so because we had that context from the book. And I'm just pulling in sort of the extra scenes that maybe we didn't see, that were deleted scenes or whatever that we had in the book to sort of add to their relationship. So I felt like that was the case here. I think I cared about the characters more than maybe the movie deserved. Like maybe the movie didn't set it all up and do the work for it, but I think I like them.
Another, Queenie did the work. Another animal.
Yeah. And I've said in the past, I stand by it. I really think it is a unique way to experience a movie that's an adaptation, is to read the book right before seeing it. I really think it'll affect your viewing. Whether or not it's better, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's definitely different.
It's funny because it can give you a certain bias. Like you're like you'll like certain characters even though they're not necessarily, like I said, maybe they don't deserve it in the movie, they didn't earn it, but you like them because of the context from the book. Or, you'll be set off by something that you're like, oh, I can't believe they changed this, totally, ruin the message of the story and things like that. Whereas like, you may be more forgiving if you didn't just read the story.
And I know for me, if I do that, I start to get pissed off at the movie for not being just like the book, even though that would make the movie like 7 hours long. And it would make a really boring movie. I'm like, but it's wrong, because that's what I experienced first. I think if I had seen the movie and then read the book, I'd be mad at the book. So,
Yeah, I mean, that happens sometimes. I think there are other times where I feel like I've read a book, seen the movie, and the movie's a big change, but like I'm on board for the changes and like I get it. And I'm like, oh, I see what they're doing here. And I can kind of delight in that in a way that if I didn't have the connective tissue as strong, I might miss, or I might just go, oh, this feels way different, and not really like see why. So it can work both ways, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's not always negative. It can sometimes actually be positive. So
there is one more scene that I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
It was at the end, instead of kind of having issues with his memory, he seems to be there fully, but he's just being abandoned by his family. And then he basically is like, "Are you going to give me a job or what?" And he's running away to the circus. But I think it was a nice and welcome change, because we talked about how he was kind of elder kidnapping an elderly person in the book, it felt like to me. And then in this case, it seems like he's going to jump on and be a part of the circus one last time and be helpful, potentially at least.
Oh, one of the things that Charlie's office felt so true to a circus office, because it was clearly like this trailer and that terrible paneling and stuff like that. That's absolutely dead on. So that felt like a circus thing. But yeah, I do like that he was just like, here, look, I'm up, I'm good. Let's just, I'll sell tickets. Let's do this. And as opposed to, and the guy said, like, are you okay? He's like, oh yeah, no, I'm fine.
So I agree with that. There was one thing I didn't like. I felt like they hit the note about him running away to the circus too hard, because they spell it out, and he says, oh, you're going to be the oldest person to ever run away to the circus. And he says, I'm not running away, I'm coming home. And it just was like, that's maybe a little too on the nose for my tastes. I like that it was kind of left unsaid in the book.
And I don't think we really saw the circus as home. At no point did he, he talked about later in Ringling it was home, but his entire experience with that circus was awful.
Pretty rough.
Like,
Yeah,
why
we just
would
saw
he be like,
a
"This is
horrible
my
traumatic
home"?
event.
Like, that was terrible.
I'm returning to the source of my trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's about time to take our vote. What do you think, James? You got anything else we want to hit on before we do our vote?
I'm ready for the vote if you guys are.
All right. Well, we're going to have the guest be the potential tiebreaker. I'm going to start off. I think I've already tipped my hand a little bit, so I'll start off. I am going to go with the book for my choice. While I enjoyed certain aspects of the film, I thought the performance by the elephant in particular was amazing. Rosie was great. I think Christoph Waltz was an engaging villain. A lot to like in this film. It just ultimately fell flat for me, based mostly off of what I think was kind of middling performance, maybe to put it kindly, for our lead, and some tonal issues, some writing issues, some pacing issues. We've kind of outlined them throughout. It's enough for me to take a slight second place to the book. So I'm going to give it to the book. What about you, James?
Yeah, I mean, you just spelled out basically everything for me. There's sort of some inconsistency in terms of pacing. There's like, it doesn't really feel like it was as focused as it could have been on like the relationship, as well as like we talked about before, the fun of the circus. I think there was like one fun scene, and then the rest of it was kind of just dramatic, as we talked about. So for that reason, I'm taking the book.
Really?
Yeah. It's just,
okay. I'm kind of surprised.
There were things to like in this movie for sure. Absolutely. I think visually they did a lot that I liked, but like, I think there's a difference between spectacle and substance, right?
Okay. All right, Mary, it's your turn. Your floor is yours.
Let's make it unanimous. Yeah, book.
Okay.
The film, I mean, I'm biased anyway. I tend to bias toward the book, and the movie has to prove itself. And I felt it just didn't really do it. It didn't add anything. It took away a lot. And while it was great to visualize everything and it was beautiful, and there's some fantastic performances, I simply cannot forgive it for cutting Bobo the chimpanzee.
Good point. We didn't even mention that. Yeah, and that was a memorable moment from the book. Yeah, all the interactions with Bobo.
No Bobo, no love. Can't do it.
All right, so I think that's going to be a good place to leave it with this project. Shout out to Jamie D, our patron who commissioned this with an assist from Stephen E. We hope you enjoyed our coverage of Water for Elephants. Thank you for doing it, and we appreciate you helping fund this podcast and keep it going. Mary, before we let you go, where can people find the Writing Easy podcast and you if they want to follow you in your writing?
I've been tweeting a lot lately. I'm Geeky Mary on Twitter. And then the Writing Easy podcast is basically just the Writing Easy podcast everywhere. Find it where you find things. Come out weekly. Subscribe, smash that button.
That's right. Hit that bell.
and then I'll tweet a lot about stuff.
Perfect. And check out the episode that I was just on if you're curious about that. It was a lot of fun. And
yeah, it's the most recent one.
Yeah, I think everybody would enjoy it. So give that a listen. It has been great having you on. Thank you for providing the real world experience perspective. That was awesome and not something we typically get to have on this podcast. So very cool.
May all your days be circus days.
Thank you so much, Mary. We appreciate you coming on.
It's been my pleasure.
Thanks once again to Mary for coming on. It was so much fun, and you had some great insight. So
yeah,
we just wanted to thank you again.
Hearing about someone who was actually in the circus was pretty amazing. So definitely shout out to her for joining us. And once again, shout out to Jamie D and Stephen E. For commissioning this project. It was a lot of fun to cover, and thank you for doing that.
Patrons extraordinaire.
Absolutely. And if you wanted to find out how to commission a project of your own, or even just, get in on the bonus content that we have on our Patreon, go to patreon.com/inktofilm, and you can find all the tiers we have on there and what we're offering. So definitely check that out.
And thank you again to both of them. Connect with us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all of those at inktofilm. And make sure to follow our Council of Inklings on Facebook. We post polls in there, which decide some of our projects occasionally. We post any sort of news we see about adaptation-related things, book, TV, movie things. So check that out. It's a great way to stay connected and see what's coming up for us.
Absolutely. And if you liked this episode, please let us know in the form of a rating and review on whatever app you use. Or if you are unable to leave one on the app you use, maybe head over to Facebook and review our page or something like that. We just love to see it, and it helps us get the word out and let other people know that this is something worth checking out.
And thank you to Ross Bugden for the use of our intro and outro music.
All right, so here we are at the end of the episode, and we wanted to announce that next week we are actually taking the week off, but we are going to be putting out an episode. It's going to be a little different. What we're doing is we're taking formerly a patron-exclusive episode, and we're going to put it out on the main feed. We're going to call it a From the Vault episode, and it's going to be for The Thing, which is the prequel, which was made later, to the original Thing, which was a remake of The Thing from Another World, which was an adaptation of Who Goes There. There we go. That's easy to remember, right?
Who Goes There? Boom. Nailed it. Boom. All right, just make sure that if you didn't follow that, rewind 15 seconds and listen to it again. And before anybody says it, we know that From the Vault is a Disney thing, but they stole the best phrase that
I
we
didn't
could
know
possibly
that,
use.
but you knew that.
So if you think that From the Vault sounds familiar, it's because Disney puts their movies in the vault for the home releases.
Yeah. Hey, we have a vault too.
We have a vault also, so Disney's not the only people.
That's right.
I don't know how that works anymore with Disney Plus. Clearly, the vault is open. So
yeah, the
maybe
vault's
we
been
can have
open,
the
so
vault.
we have the
can
vault
have the
now.
thing now.
Yeah. Also, if you're looking for our next major project we're going to do for like an episode proper, we're going to be getting into The Outsider by Stephen King following next week, and I'm very excited to get into it. I'm hearing good things about the show, so we're going to be covering the book and show over the course of, I believe, 3 episodes. So stay tuned for that. Start reading now if you want to get a head start on it. It should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I can't wait. My girlfriend's been watching it without me, and I've been like dying to watch it. So I'm really excited to finally break into it.
All right. I am ready for that. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. But until next time.
Thanks for listening.